In American true crime, few names evoke the same chilling fascination as Robert Durst. Born into immense wealth as heir to a New York real estate empire, Durst's life is a twisted tale of disappearances and deaths. His name first surfaced in the 1982 disappearance of his wife, Kathy McCormick Durst. Years later, Durst was linked to the murder of Susan Berman, his longtime friend and confidant. The investigation into Berman's murder unearthed unsettling connections to Durst, including an anonymous letter sent to police. Law enforcement uncovered another suspicious death in Galveston, Texas. Morris Black, Durst's neighbor. Durst admitted to killing and dismembering Black but claimed self-defense and was acquitted of murder. The public remained captivated by Durst, a man who seemed to evade true accountability. In 2015, HBO's The Jinx, the life and deaths of Robert Durst, thrust Durst back into the spotlight. The series culminated in a shocking climax. Durst, unaware he was being recorded, muttered, "What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course." This chilling admission sent shockwaves through the nation. The web of intrigue surrounding Robert Durst had finally tightened. Kathleen McCormick, known as Kathy, was a bright, vivacious young woman with a promising future. She met Robert Durst while studying to become a pediatrician, and their whirlwind romance quickly culminated in marriage. However, behind the facade of their seemingly idyllic life, a darker reality was emerging. On January 31, 1982, Kathy Durst vanished without a trace. Robert claimed she left their lakeside cottage after an argument, intending to return to her studies. As the investigation gained momentum, Robert's behavior became increasingly erratic and suspicious. While Robert maintained his innocence, those who knew Kathy refused to believe she would abandon her life. Friends recounted instances of Robert's controlling behavior and Kathy's fear of his unpredictable temper. As the investigation deepened, Robert's story began to crumble. His initial account was contradicted by phone records, and he changed his story multiple times. Despite mounting suspicions, concrete evidence remained elusive, and the case went cold. Susan Berman, a writer and journalist, had been a close confidant of Robert Durst for decades. In the years following Kathy's disappearance, Berman became a staunch defender of Durst. Behind closed doors, their conversations may have hinted at a shared secret. On Christmas Eve 2000, Susan Berman was found dead in her home, a single gunshot wound to the back of her head. The timing of her death, coinciding with the reopened investigation into Kathy Durst's disappearance, seemed more than a coincidence. Was Berman silenced to prevent her from revealing what she knew about Kathy's fate? Investigators discovered an anonymous letter sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department after Berman's murder. The letter, known as the Cadaver Note, became a focal point of the investigation. The similarities between the handwriting on the note and Durst's own writing were undeniable. Investigators uncovered unsettling parallels between Susan Berman's murder and Kathy Durst's disappearance. Both women had been close to Robert Durst and met untimely, violent ends. The similarities suggested a chilling modus operandi. Despite mounting evidence, Robert Durst remained a step ahead of the law. He vanished from New York shortly after Berman's murder, his whereabouts unknown. The shadow of Robert Durst loomed large, a chilling reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters walk among us. In the wake of Susan Berman's murder, Robert Durst, once a figure of wealth and privilege, became a fugitive, fleeing the mounting suspicions that swirled around him like a gathering storm. He sought refuge in the unlikeliest of places, Galveston, Texas, a faded coastal town far removed from the glittering world he once inhabited. There, in a modest apartment overlooking the Gulf of Mexico, Durst attempted to disappear, to outrun his past and the specter of his alleged crimes. To further shield himself from scrutiny, Durst adopted a bizarre and unsettling disguise. He donned women's clothing, a wig, and even pretended to be mute, his voice, once a symbol of his privileged upbringing, now silenced by fear and a desperate need to remain undetected. He went by the name Dorothy Sinner, a shy, unassuming woman who kept to herself, her true identity hidden beneath layers of deception. Galveston, with its labyrinthine streets and transient population, provided the perfect cover for a man seeking anonymity. Durst blended into the background, his days spent in quiet solitude, his only companions the ghosts of his past that refused to be silenced. He lived a life stripped bare of the luxuries he once took for granted, his days a stark contrast to the opulence of his former life. It was in this self-imposed exile that Robert Durst crossed paths with Morris Black, a cantankerous but harmless old man who lived across the hall in their dilapidated apartment building. Black, a Navy veteran with a gruff exterior and a heart of gold, was a solitary figure, his life marked by hardship and loss. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, an unlikely friendship blossomed between the reclusive millionaire in hiding and the aging loner. They were an odd pair, Durst and Black, their lives a study in contrasts. Durst, the scion of a real estate empire, now reduced to living a lie, his every move dictated by fear. Black, a man of simple means, his life a testament to resilience in the face of adversity. They found solace in each other's company, sharing meals, stories, and a bond forged in the crucible of their shared isolation. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly innocuous friendship, a dark undercurrent was brewing. Durst, despite his disguise and his attempts to distance himself from his past, remained a man teetering on the edge, his demons never far behind. Black, perhaps unwittingly, had stumbled into a web of secrets and lies, a web that threatened to ensnare them both. On September 30th, 2001, the fragile peace of Durst's self-imposed exile was shattered. The Galveston Police Department received an anonymous phone call, a man's voice directing them to Durst's apartment building, his tone urgent, his message chilling. There were body parts in Galveston Bay. The police descended upon the apartment building, their investigation leading them to a gruesome discovery. Floating in the murky waters of the bay were several black plastic trash bags, their contents a macabre puzzle that would soon send shockwaves through the quiet coastal town. Inside the bags, investigators found the dismembered remains of Morris Black, his body cut into pieces, his life brutally extinguished. The discovery of Black's body sent a chill down the spines of the investigators, the brutality of the crime suggesting a level of rage and premeditation that defied explanation. The apartment building, once a haven for Durst's desperate attempt at anonymity, was now a crime scene, the walls seemingly closing in on the fugitive who had tried so desperately to outrun his past. The trial of Robert Durst for the murder of Morris Black began in 2003, captivating the nation and reigniting the debate over whether the millionaire heir was a cold-blooded killer or a deeply troubled man caught in a web of his own making. Durst, his disguise shed, his true identity revealed, sat in the courtroom, his face a mask of impassivity, as the prosecution laid out their case. They argued that Durst had murdered Black in cold blood, dismembering his body in a desperate attempt to cover up his crime. They pointed to Durst's history of suspicious behavior, his flight from justice following the deaths of both Kathy Durst and Susan Berman, and his bizarre attempt to disappear in Galveston as evidence of his guilt. Durst's defense team countered with a shocking claim self-defense. They argued that Durst and Black had struggled over a gun and that Durst had shot Black accidentally in a moment of panic. They painted a picture of Durst as a deeply troubled but ultimately harmless man, driven to desperation by the events of his past. They argued that his decision to dismember Black's body, while gruesome, was an act of panic, not premeditation. The jury, faced with the daunting task of separating fact from fiction, deliberated for days, weighing the evidence and the conflicting narratives presented by both sides. The weight of the evidence, including the gruesome nature of Black's death and Durst's history of suspicious behavior, seemed insurmountable. Yet, to the shock of many, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on the charge of murder. They found Durst guilty of tampering with evidence, specifically the dismemberment and disposal of Black's body. But on the most serious charge, the charge that had haunted Durst for decades, he was acquitted. The verdict sent shockwaves through the courtroom and beyond. For the families of Kathy Durst and Susan Berman, the verdict felt like a punch to the gut, a cruel reminder that justice for their loved ones remained elusive. For Durst, it was a stunning victory, a reprieve from the specter of a life behind bars. But it was a victory tinged with unease, a reminder that the past, like a shadow, has a way of catching up with even the most cunning of fugitives. In 2015, Robert Durst's name resurfaced with HBO's The Jinx, a series that changed his life forever. Directed by Andrew Jarecki, it delved into Durst's past, revealing hidden truths. Jarecki secured unprecedented access to Durst, capturing his every word and gesture. The series unfolded like a thriller, exposing contradictions and chilling possibilities. Through meticulous research, the filmmakers painted a damning portrait of Durst. The Jinx was not merely a rehash of old news, a retelling of a story that had already been told. The filmmakers, through dogged determination and access to previously undisclosed evidence, managed to unearth new truths that had long been buried beneath layers of deceit and obfuscation. They uncovered financial records that contradicted Durst's alibis, eyewitness accounts that challenged his versions of events, and most damningly, a series of handwritten letters penned by Durst himself, their contents revealing a chilling glimpse into the mind of a man seemingly teetering on the edge of madness. One letter, in particular, sent a chill down the spines of viewers and investigators alike. It was a letter written by Durst to Susan Berman, his longtime friend and confidant, the woman who had been found murdered in her Benedict Canyon home just months before the premiere of The Jinx. The handwriting in the letter bore an uncanny resemblance to the handwriting on the cadaver note, the anonymous letter sent to police alerting them to Berman's body. The letter to Berman, coupled with the mounting evidence presented in the series, painted a damning picture of Durst, a man whose life seemed to be a tapestry woven from threads of deceit, manipulation, and violence. The weight of his past, the unsolved disappearances, and the chillingly similar deaths pressed down on him, the walls of his carefully constructed reality seemingly closing in. Section 3. The Bathroom Confession, a moment of truth or delusion. The climax of The Jinx came in the final episode. Durst, unaware his microphone was live, retreated to a bathroom. In this unguarded moment he whispered, "What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course." The words captured on audio were a bombshell. Was this the moment of truth, or the ramblings of a troubled mind? Section 4, A Nation Captivated, the aftermath of the confession. The impact of The Jinx on popular culture was immediate and profound. The series, with its gripping narrative, its masterful use of archival footage and present-day interviews, and its shocking climax, reignited the public's fascination with Robert Durst, transforming him from a reclusive figure lurking in the shadows of his family's wealth into a household name, a symbol of privilege, deceit, and the elusive nature of justice. The bathroom confession in particular became a cultural touchstone, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most compelling evidence comes from the most unexpected of sources. It sparked a national conversation about the power of documentary filmmaking, its ability to not only entertain but also to inform, to expose wrongdoing, and in some cases to even help bring criminals to justice. The series also raised uncomfortable questions about the role of wealth and privilege in the justice system. Durst, despite a long history of suspicious behavior and a mountain of circumstantial evidence against him, had managed to evade accountability for years, his wealth and connections seemingly shielding him from the consequences of his actions. The Jinx, by shining a light on Durst's life and alleged crimes, forced the public to confront the uncomfortable reality that justice is not always blind, that sometimes the scales are tipped in favor of those with the means to manipulate the system. Section 1. Justice delayed but not denied. The arrest. The reverberations of Robert Durst's chilling bathroom confession, captured so starkly in the Jinx, sent shockwaves through law enforcement agencies across the country. The Los Angeles Police Department, armed with renewed determination and the weight of public scrutiny, reignited their investigation into the murder of Susan Berman, their focus now laser-focused on Durst, the man who had seemingly confessed to her murder and countless others. On March 14, 2015, just hours before the final episode of The Jinx aired, Robert Durst was apprehended in a New Orleans hotel room, his attempt to once again disappear into the anonymity of a transient life thwarted by a team of FBI agents and local law enforcement officers. He was found with a loaded revolver, a map with directions to Cuba, and a wad of cash, his belongings hinting at a desperate attempt to flee justice, to outrun the consequences of his past. The arrest of Robert Durst, a man who had for decades seemed untouchable, sent a collective sigh of relief through the families of his alleged victims, their long wait for justice seemingly nearing its end. Kathy Durst's sisters, who had never given up hope that their sister's disappearance would one day be solved, expressed cautious optimism, their voices trembling with a mixture of grief, anger, and a sliver of hope that their sister's killer would finally be held accountable. The trial of Robert Durst for the murder of Susan Berman began in Los Angeles in 2021, more than 2 decades after Berman's lifeless body was found in her Benedict Canyon home. The trial, delayed by legal wrangling and the COVID-19 pandemic, was one of the most highly anticipated criminal proceedings in recent memory, captivating the nation and drawing comparisons to the sensational trials of O.J. Simpson and Casey Anthony. The prosecution, led by Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney John Lewin, presented a methodical and damning case against Durst, weaving together a tapestry of evidence that spanned decades and multiple states. They argued that Durst had murdered Berman to prevent her from revealing what she knew about the disappearance of his first wife, Kathy Durst, a crime they believed he had committed more than 2 decades earlier. The prosecution called a parade of witnesses to the stand, their testimonies painting a chilling portrait of Durst as a controlling, manipulative, and ultimately dangerous man. Friends and family members of both Kathy Durst and Susan Berman recounted instances of Durst's volatile temper, his possessive behavior, and his chilling lack of empathy for the suffering he inflicted on those around him. On September 17, 2021, after months of testimony and a mountain of evidence presented against him, the jury in the Robert Durst trial reached a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Susan Berman. The verdict, read aloud in a hushed courtroom, sent a ripple of emotion through the gallery, a collective gasp followed by tears of relief, cries of vindication, and the palpable sense that justice, though long delayed, had finally been served. The guilty verdict was a resounding victory for the prosecution, a testament to their meticulous case and their unwavering pursuit of justice for Susan Berman. It was also a victory for the families of Durst's alleged victims, who had waited decades for this moment, their grief and anger palpable, their voices trembling with a mixture of sorrow and relief as they addressed the court, their words echoing the profound loss they had endured. For Robert Durst, the guilty verdict marked the end of a long and twisted road, his carefully constructed facade of wealth, privilege, and eccentricity crumbling beneath the weight of his own actions. He sat motionless in the courtroom as the verdict was read, his face betraying no emotion, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the jury box, his fate sealed. The conviction of Robert Durst for the murder of Susan Berman marked the closing chapter in one of the most sensational and closely watched criminal cases in American history. Durst, the enigmatic heir to a real estate empire, had for decades managed to evade accountability for his alleged crimes, his life a testament to the power of wealth, privilege, and a carefully crafted public persona to obscure the darkest of truths. The Durst case, however, transcended the boundaries of a typical murder trial, becoming a cultural phenomenon that captivated the nation and sparked a broader conversation about the role of media, the complexities of memory and perception, and the elusive nature of justice in a society where wealth and power often tip the scales in favor of the privileged few. The Jinx: The Life and Deaths of Robert Durst, the HBO documentary series that played a pivotal role in bringing Durst to justice, stands as a testament to the power of storytelling in the digital age. The series, through its masterful use of archival footage, interviews, and Durst's own chilling words captured on a live microphone, wove together a narrative so compelling, so intricately detailed, that it transcended the limitations of traditional journalism, blurring the lines between entertainment and investigative reporting. The Durst case starkly highlights the corrosive influence of wealth and privilege on the justice system. Durst operated with impunity, shielded by his family's wealth and connections. Despite being a suspect in his wife's disappearance for decades, he evaded arrest. A documentary series, not law enforcement, finally brought him to justice. Durst's case exposed systemic inequities, showing justice as a commodity for the wealthy. Despite his conviction for the murder of Susan Berman, and the mountain of circumstantial evidence linking him to the deaths of both Kathy Durst and Morris Black, the Robert Durst saga remains shrouded in mystery. Durst, who died in prison in January 2022 at the age of 78, took many secrets to his grave, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions that continue to haunt those who were touched by his life and alleged crimes. The whereabouts of Kathy Durst's remains, despite numerous searches and countless hours of investigation, have never been found. Her disappearance, the catalyst for the decades-long pursuit of justice that culminated in Durst's conviction, remains an open wound, a constant reminder of the elusiveness of closure and the profound loss endured by her family and friends. The circumstances surrounding the death of Morris Black, the man Durst admitted to killing and dismembering in Galveston, Texas, also remain a source of debate and speculation. While Durst was acquitted of Black's murder, claiming self-defense, the brutality of the crime and the bizarre circumstances surrounding it continue to fuel speculation that Durst may have gotten away with murder, his wealth and privilege once again shielding him from the full force of the law. If you found this story intriguing, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. Your support helps us bring more stories to light.